Good evening, everybody. Together with Dr. Honoris Causa Piotr Kardasz, we would like to welcome you very warmly to today's meeting, which will start a series of meetings entitled What is Hidden in Nature? I don't think there is a better person, a better guest whom I could have invited to this very topic. And my guest today and yours is an absolutely exceptional personality, Dr. Honoris Causa Piotr Kardasz, who is a biologist, a journalist, and an educator. He is a person who is very close to me and with whom I have had the pleasure of working for a really good few years now, including as part of the social campaign I Live Consciously, a project in which we are meeting today. And under these activities that the doctor shares all of himself, I dare say literally all of himself, with his knowledge, passion, this connection, this closeness, this unbelievable closeness to nature. Doctor, I would like to say a big thank you for today's meeting, today's opportunity, and for accepting the invitation to such a series which we are going to create together. Thank you very much for such wonderful dedications. I even feel a bit embarrassed because I don't know if I deserve it. I can only tell you that ever since I was a child, I have been absolutely fascinated by what nature offers. I probably have a slightly different energy because nature attracts me. And today, as you can see, I want to tell you about the natural wonder that is chlorophyll. The subject of today's meeting is at least 13 secrets of chlorophyll. More could be said about this, but before I reveal these secrets, I would like to tell you that I have deliberately chosen contrasting colors because, in fact, chlorophyll allows life on Earth to exist at all. It converts the sun's rays into the value of life, and at the same time, it produces sugar in plants because it is found in the leaves of plants, in the so-called plastids, where, of course, these are rings connected to each other. And why do we have the color red? Because it accumulates the fraction that is the most important for energy, red and blue. The green and yellow fractions are less active, but above all, it is the front runner in this. And so this potential allows plants to produce sugar in the first place from carbon dioxide and water, but at the same time to desaturate the air because oxygen is released. If we change the parameters of life on the globe and we change them too quickly in relation to the capacity for regeneration, nature has the capacity for regeneration, then this disruption has negative effect. I would say that civilization limits the nature ability to regenerate at lightning speed. You could say that a forest, for example, a mixed forest is an ecosystem that could last for millions of years. The problem is that it is destroyed either by a natural cataclysm like lightning, flooding, or normally by environmental factors today forced by man. And cutting down a forest is also a human act. Chlorophyll has its own structure, and I won't go into all details because our meeting has limited time. I would like to tell you about these mysteries. And the first secret, dear friends, is first of all antioxidant properties. To understand oxidation, I would like to tell you what oxidation is and that it is harmful to our body. Our body has the ability to produce oxygen atoms or free electrons so that at some point cells that have fulfilled the role can be exchanged for new ones. Of course, this replacement, as you know, takes place every 7 years, with exception of the nervous system. At this point, they have to apoptose these cells by means of division that is not meiotic but mitotic. That is, the second part is rebuilt. So the cell is still functioning, but it is no longer has the turgor, the flexibility that it had over the previous 7 years. At this point, factors such as particulate matter or other chemical compounds that enter our body along with the preserved food, such as excess plant protection compounds or even nitrites contained in fertilizer, come in from outside. At this point, they are able to lead to inflammation, and acute inflammation can turn into chronic inflammation, in which case the cell walls dissolve. And if this happens somewhere near the blood vessels, because all cells, after all, are uh, nourished by blood and lymph, then at this point it reaches the nervous system and blocks the functional genes, but gene expression is changed. The gene is correct, but often there are symptoms as if the person had a genetic disease. That is, people live for some years. There was no evidence that something was wrong, and suddenly the situation arose. Chlorophyll carries with it an opposing charge. In other words, it wears off. Therefore, its consumption with plants or a wise supplementation, and you will find that it will be more important where we also release chlorophyllin, because chlorophyll is a pigment locked in specific spaces, whereas chlorophyllin has the value of carrying more additional components, including oxygen. And another thing is through this gastric route, because as you know, our lungs are responsible for oxygen uptake. In fact, erythrocytes have porphyrin rings with the iron in the center, and this is trivalent iron, whereas in the case of chlorophyll, the central part of this ring is copper. And while the iron at some point transporting the oxygen taken up in the alveoli and then transported through the blood system, specifically the arterial system, through the arterioles to the cells, it gives away and the iron falls to the level 2 to be active again. Someone has to raise its value, and this is where chlorophyll comes in. But chlorophyll, thanks to the fact that it has copper in its ring, which binds oxygen permanently, consequently carrying it through the body, contributes to many useful things. In other words, it oxygenates the body, in many cases up to the aforementioned 38%. This is not my invention. This information comes from scientists, biologists all over the world who, when researching, have claimed that such huge potential lies precisely in chlorophyll and the chlorophyllin. I always emphasize that these two terms are important because at the end of my talk today, you will see how this chlorophyll can be supplemented, that is supplemented in the form that is most active and beneficial to our body. Third thing is effective detoxification. As you know, the pH of our physiological fluids, that is to say the lymph and the blood, should be 7.45. However, if only because of the excess of that develops in the stomach, it is able to lower the pH even further, and this subsequently affects the whole pH of our fluids. And at the same time, in the same environment where there are acid-resistant bacteria and they are adapted to function in an aerobic environment, there are also lactobacilli, which are able to live anaerobically and in an aerobic environment. And this is of added value because in this case, if there is a presence of chlorophyll, it raises the efficiency of lactobacillus in the rest of the digestive tract, stabilizing what actually happens in the intestine. This is basically where the mystery of food metabolism takes place. The active ingredients for our body, that is those that build tissues, that provide energy and are regulators of many processes. But we also often say that they are not nutritional but essential. Nowadays, it is antioxidants that are indispensable because, to name just one of the most carcinogenic agents, particulate matter. This particulate matter rises to the height of about 10 kilometers above the earth level, and at that point it accumulates until the air pressure starts to change. If it starts to decrease, it simultaneously decreases. The worst situation is just before it rains, where the clouds are already practically very low to the ground, and this dust carried with it benzoalpha pyrene, heavy metals, and many other pollutants that are carcinogenic to our bodies. If we were to go outdoors, it would never be just before the storm, because at that moment we are walking surrounded by the air in which there are the most negative agents. On the other hand, we will talk about how chlorophyll later on could catch them, because in the body it contributes to the fact that it maintains pH. Because if the pH of the physiological fluid is lower, that is acidic, you know that the neutral pH is 7. We are talking about the acidification of the body, even if it drops to 7.30. And at that point, there is a failure of the full body, because putreactive bacteria start to develop in the digestive tract, which have a destructive effect on liver and production of glutathione, which is the main driving force of our immunity. And finally, another thing, it supports beneficial flora. It eliminates free radical. I told you what free radicals are. And in this case, oxygen captures them. Yes, it wears out, which is sometimes the amount of fruit and vegetables that we eat is too small for the chlorophyll that we supply to our body, or the chlorophyllene that is in the chlorophyll, to be able to catch all the negative factors in our body. Hence the idea to supplement this with supplementation. And finally, it counteracts mutations. I told you that an excess of reactive electrons can lead to acute inflammations, and these can affect the nervous system or the DNA of our cells in general. Despite the fact that genes are correct, but individual genes are blocked. And recently, research results have shown that often people in old age have tremors in their hands, sometimes symptoms of amnesia, and this is attributed to Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease. And in many cases, it is the result, to put it another way, of the blockade of the correct gene by reactive electrons. In this case, chlorophyll is able to catch them, and it frees the body from such a threat. What's important, it also contributes to erythropoiesis. Erythropoiesis is the process that takes place in the bone marrow. Basically, it's a cycle, because first erythrocytes form, then lymphocytes form, and consequently there is a third stage later, which occurs after 90 days or so. That is the lifespan of the red blood cells, lasts 9 months, but the cycle has to be reversed. In this case, chlorophyll facilitates efficiently, because, as I told you, the iron should be trivalent, which binds oxygen. And when the erythrocytes have taken up oxygen in the alveoli and delivered it via the bloodstream throughout the body, they have reduced. Chlorophyll contributes to the elevation of iron. And the next thing is to neutralize muscle acidification. This can affect any of us with physical exertion, but athletes feel it most acutely. For example, first there is an intensive training session, and after training you need to freshen up, and the next day there is a match. If the match lasts a certain number of minutes in the normal way, and then you have to do overtime, you know that the effort is so great that muscle cramps occur. Why? Well, because in a unit of time, the athlete or anyone working intensely is mentally motivated to get the job done as efficiently and as quickly as possible. They consume glucose, but not enough oxygen because the capacity of our lungs is limited. At this point, the glucose is rapidly used up and the so-called anaerobic respiration takes place, in which there is only 1/10 of the energy that would be produced if oxygen was present. But the consequence is lactic acid, which acidifies the muscles. Afterwards, of course, the body has to be refreshed, and sometimes this takes 2 or 3 days. We often feel soreness in these muscles. And in this case, when we take chlorophyll, it carries oxygen via the gastric route. And as I told you, it is not always 38%, but scientific studies have shown that even that figure can be supplemented by sufficient oxygen at this point. It allows you to generate maximum effort and efficiency. And another thing, it strengthens the blood vessels. You know that the blood vessels are more solidly built because under the pressure the blood is transported. But these thinnest capillaries or even veins, even though they have circular muscles inside, because in the toes, for example, we don't have any extra hearts to pump, these muscles should contract. There are so-called valves where these are kind of shells which, thanks to which in a young person there is a regular contraction and diastole. And the blood rises upwards, and when it reaches again the heart and the lungs, it is oxygenated, and then this oxygen value will be distributed throughout the body. And in this case, as we get older, there is a stasis, and often to the point where there are metabolites in which which with the blood which should be removed, filtered out, and above all, removed with urine. Here, by the way, along with chlorophyll, you need to drink a little more water because it contributes to diuresis, and therefore, at the same time, the flushing of negative components from the body. And at this point, by drinking chlorophyll, we are able to improve our muscles, because you know that more oxygen in the body is a genetic capacity for regeneration, and appropriate to our gene and our age, it is more efficient. That is, it is optimal. It also optimizes the work of our blood vessels, especially in the case we are talking about veins. It has also a beneficial effect on the thyroid. I have even specifically mentioned that on ovulatory cycles and lactation. It actually works not only when chlorophylling, that and the extract that I will tell you about later are included along with chlorophyll. The composition of the supplement must be preceded by thorough research and analysis of everything that the world has discovered in order to compose it in synergy. But at the same time, to supplement the factors indispensable for the thyroid gland, which regulates the cycle, and not only lactation, ovulatory cycle, or performance in general in another way. Because it is, as I often say, like a prime minister in a government. It determines the physiological processes in the body. The right amount of oxygen is needed for it to carry out these processes. Here, it is worth mentioning that, in fact, this story about the thyroid gland is related to the other endocrine glands. And in a moment, we will also talk about the pancreas, for the reason that the pancreas, in this case, is mainly responsible for Sugar levels in the body. In fact, in the pancreas, the alpha cells produce insulin, that is in the islets of Langerhans. 10% of the pancreas, this is where insulin is produced. Beta cells produce glucagon, which releases increased amount of oxygen. And at this point, the consumption of glucose that was in the body starts to release protein. In fact, more than half of our body's protein is converted back into glucose. In fact, the normal supply in the form of glycogen in the muscle or liver, but it is a small amount. Our body starts to use protein as a material to release. Of course, there are delta cells that control the work of these two in order for the growth hormone process to take place properly. Even an adult must have the right amount of this growth hormone, which in its early stages determines the multiplication of the body weight and height. We say that the right levels of growth hormone is also our body's fitness. And this is mapped out in this point 10, that the glucose levels, this is where it stabilizes. So it is because these three clusters of cells produce one insulin, the second glucagon, and the third somatostatin, which controls the levels of both of these and also growth hormone that we feel, I would say, relatively to our age. And you can say younger than it would be if we did not have the possibility of influence. And chlorophyll, by influencing, because of its oxygen carrying activities, increases the efficiency of all the structures I have just mentioned. It is also important that it slows down the skin's aging process. As you know, the skin on the outside naturally has a pigment, melanin, which can increase in quantity in the sun, so our complexion is tanned, but at this point it is also aging faster. The dermis is nourished by the blood, and at this point, if we get chlorophyll, then even without sunlight, we will have a slightly peachy tone to our skin. It will not be tanned, but at the same time, it will be better nourished. And that is the anti-aging process for everyone. Ladies will certainly begin to appreciate this, especially at the age when the menopause sets in. This is where the estrogen to start, where there is no estrogen to say otherwise to keep you active. I often say that it's a fitness hormone, a lifespan hormone, because the mother has to raise the child. So nature has made it so that estrogen prolongs a woman's life in relation to the same gene as, for example, her brother by at least those 8 years. And after that, unfortunately, everything starts to rapidly decline and there is no ability to synthesize collagen. So at this point, an increased amount of chlorophyll is able to nourish this efficiently. And with this substrate of chlorophyll and additionally still collagen, improve the very fact that the deep wrinkles do not appear. The 12th function, it stabilizes blood clotting. This, of course, is done in the bone marrow where erythropoiesis takes place because it also includes platelets and lymphocytes, but with the additional amount of oxygen, the efficiency is optimized in relation to the body's capacity, not underestimated. And this is too, it's not my wish, but the result of research which has proven how far chlorophyll, this gift of nature, binds carbon dioxide from the air. Thanks to the sun's ray, together with water, it is able to produce sugar that is energy material but releases oxygen back into the body. And we come to the next point, namely the process of cleansing the body of toxins, including heavy metals. I have told you that in fact its activity determines, that is, consumes, in a way it binds to the molecule of a particular negative factor, be it benzopyrene, be it nitrates, in this case heavy metals. And if we are talking about heavy metals, then this term is a little bit inappropriate because heavy metals also include aluminum, which is not as heavy as, for example, lead or cadmium. But these are elements with a density greater than 4.5 grams per cubic centimeters. And here we could also add cadmium, steel, and many others. These are indeed extremely carcinogenic for our body, and if they enter the body, they generally ruin some of our liver functions. By drinking chlorophyll, we are able to bind them, and until now it seemed impossible to flush them out of the body. They are bound to chlorophyll and are able to be removed by diuresis, of course. That is, in this case, if we live in such an atmosphere where particulate matter often appears. I recently read that airplanes, as you can see, leave a trail. And that happens then because airplanes generally level off at altitudes above 8 or 9,000 meters. That is 9 kilometers. When the particulate matter is at the limit of their flight, at that point the exhaust fumes bind to it, and the concentration at that site is so huge that you would think that someone is deliberately dropping pollution on us from the sky. And these pollutants are often brought downwind from remote areas of Asia. It has been calculated that some pollutants also enter the United States of Europe from industrial plants in China via this air route. And at this point, we are talking about 13 functions of chlorophyll. I have mentioned 13, but I want to tell you that there is another one that is worth remembering. You know that we can spritz ourselves with perfume and it smells good. The problem is that garlic has health properties and everyone knows it, but it has its own specific smell, not necessarily pleasant. And even if we have eaten 1 or 2 days before, for health reasons, and we have not gone out and our household members have also eaten garlic, well, at this point we do not smell it. We smell the perfume, but the garlic smell follows us because it also comes out partly with the sweat. When we drink chlorophyll, it binds all kind of odors. You can say that it is an internal deodorant, and at the same time, a perfume that can reveal its smell. Recent studies have shown that if we exercise regularly, not necessarily for long periods of time, let's say we run for a few tens of minutes at a time and drink chlorophyll, we lose some of our excess weight faster. I hope you are taking care of your figure. It is worth making a note of it. And now you are about to learn that chlorophyll itself is, of course, a gift from nature. However, in order for it to be able to perform these 13 functions in the body, include the binding of unpleasant odors, it must be skillfully composed. And here we will start first with chlorella. This is why chlorella is so important, as it is the smallest algae and counts among the most optimal chlorophyll content and also chlorophyllin values. Please note that next to it we have barley extract, as this is a release of micronutrient content and B vitamins, especially niacin, which is crucial for the efficiency of our hormones. At the same time, these other micronutrients are activating factors for many enzymes. I said that iodine, for example, is needed for the thyroid gland to regulate the hormonal function of our body, but at the same time, selenium, which turns out uh, that in the chlorophyllin, just from barley, these proportions are almost perfect. Not only is there also vitamin E and A, but there is this complex with niacin, conventionally vitamin B7, or often H, which determines the efficiency of our nervous system as well. So you can see that yet an additional area of oxygenation of the body. This also makes the brain work better. I mentioned chlorella as one of the oldest algae. Its smallest algae. Its individual size is so small that we can only see an ensemble of millions of its individual cells, and its productivity is incomparable, several times greater than any other plant. Because imagine an oak tree that has a sum of leaves, tall, massive, 30 meters wide crown, a total of, say, 300 meters leaves. And it turns out that the grass that grows next to this oak and has the same surface area already has 4 to 8 times the oxygen release capacity, and chlorophyll several times more, because it has to produce everything for itself. And this produces as many as 8 essential amino acids, including tryptophan, other vitamins, trace elements, and so-called products necessary for our body. First of all, as far as protein is uh, concerned. And this is the brilliance of its composition. I could go on and on for a long time about alfalfa, as it contains 7 enzymes already crucial for our body to activate basic functions. At the same time, it is also a carrier of those micronutrients I told you. And finally, peppermint oil, which affects the essential functions of the digestive tract, namely physiological, metabolic, and protective. In some, it is only in this synergized forms that they are able to optimize the effects of our body. Both chlorophyll and supplements should contain these so-called golden rules. First and foremost, zero preservatives. And here there are no external preservatives and zero GMOs, packed in glass that does not allow light to pass through, and this could contribute to oxidation. The innovation high hydrostatic process method is a combination of both the pressure exclusion of the presence of any pathogens, but at the same time also the exclusion of the so-called chemical conflict. So if we combine extracts from some plants, at this point, they must be selected in such a way that there are no opposing reactions. And another element of those golden rules is 1% of 100% of what Mother Nature gave us from primary plants, original ones. Because as you know, today man has started to introduce new varieties, and it is supposedly a good thing because there is more food. The problem is that the proportion of this original genetics have been disturbed, where the amount of sugar in relation to other ingredients has been increased. So the sugars for us today are excessive in relation to other ingredients. So if they are organic or the original plant, and this is what we are trying to source for production, chlorella is the original plant for the time being. Man has not genetically changed it. So it gives us the same value there. Draw attention that we derive the greatest wisdom of this world regarding what a brilliant product chlorophyll and chlorophyllin are. We have drawn on many documents produced by scientific institutions around the world. You can, of course, go back and see if there has been any revaluation of this product. I will tell you that I have modestly referred to this value because it could be discussed more extensively. And perhaps there will be an occasion where I will refer to it, but remember also, I will stop here for a moment, quietly read for yourself, because all this information contained in this presentation is for educational purposes. You know, we are not saying that a supplement is a medicine. I often say, for heaven's sake, doctors are there to administer medicines because our health condition has gone so far. We take care of our health on an ongoing basis so that we don't get sick. And this is what it's all about, supplementing with supplements that we don't have in sufficient quantity. And what's unnecessary in this case, among other things, is free radicals. I hope that you will find this chlorophyll in your homes. After a while, you will notice how your digestive tract works better, how you think better, and how your hormones work better at the same time. Do not expect this to happen overnight. As you can see, erythropoiesis itself takes 90 days. And after that, of course, it's all over again. In the same way, it takes some time to improve certain processes in the body. And we often say that supplementation should be at least 3 months. But what I want to tell you that when the body is practically in debt, on the brink of illness, taking supplements gives faster results because the body wants to defend itself. Anyway, I would like to tell you about the wisdom of the body, which excludes, as long as it is possible, the so-called oxidation, so that if an organ is heavily burdened and there are practically more free radicals and there is there is other form, another area that is doing well, it borrows this energy, but then the other structures have to take care to balance everything out. You see, wisdom is in our body. It is greater than the keenest minds, both pharmaceutical and as a humble person. I'm trying to fathom this mystery of nature, and I am happy to pass it on you. In conclusion, I would like to wish you good health and enjoy the gift of nature. My dear friends, I don't know about you, but I was successfully persuaded by my doctor to have a glass of chlorophyll, which I reached for during the presentation. Doctor, thanks a lot for this very simple recipe. And as you can see, the wisdom of nature, it is simply amazing. And it's a sin not to take advantage of it. And my dear listeners, together with Dr. Kardasz, we would like to invite you to events, both live and online, which we organize as part of our foundation, not only with our distinguished guests today, but also with a number of experts from various fields and countries. Doctor, you work closely with these experts. I think you would certainly like to add something from your own perspective, perhaps to share in the context of this event. Well, it's a completely different message. Live, we have 3 hours to speak, to share. I can tell you one thing, that the kind of droning device that stands in front of me, even though I have worked for over 40 years for several television channels in front of a microphone on the radio, recorded thousands of broadcasts. It is not the same when man meets man, when people meet together, because the energy is palpable. It is perceptible, as someone calculated from scientists, even over a dozen meters. If we attract someone with our eyes, it means that our energy has reached the person. I am impressed, and I say this by my last two trips, above all to Riga. Congratulations at a distance, at the moment, for having prepared everything in an absolutely wonderful way. Believe me, at some point I was in tears because a special song was prepared for me. And a choir of club members sang a wonderful melody for me. I will not repeat it. I think that they will repeat it in Poland one day because it was really so captivating. Importantly, so was my last meeting in Szczecin, which I attended before the pandemic 4 years ago, and it seemed to have something um, to have put something to sleep there. Now, not only were there a lot of people in the room who were curious or interested in improving their own health, but the medical world had arrived. And for me, a man who only deals with nature, which of course, as you know, I have studied other subject consciously in order to be able to relate to the subject universally. But I always say that I never wanted to be a doctor, and the reality is that people often treat me as a savior from illness. And that's a burden that is difficult because the doctor has a lot of research and I'm not able and I don't have the right to normally in public. On the other hand, some of the information to these people as they approach me, uh, especially health professionals, thank me for supposedly knowing everything. So that help accompanies me. And all of this extraordinary energy that the doctor mentions, this wealth of knowledge and passion, as you can see, I have been continually impressed for so many years by this passion and the heart for the doctor to share the knowledge, regardless, as you mentioned, be it Poland, Szczecin, or other country like recent visit to Riga, Latvia. By the way, we warmly greet today our foreign guests from the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Latvia, Ukraine, Hungary, because this webinar has been prepared and translated into these languages for you today. And of course, all the participants in our projects from Poland. My dear friends, speaking of foreign countries, we are also carrying out our educational activities there with the participation of various experts in various fields. As I mentioned, you are cordially invited to have a look at our website in order to keep up to date and benefit from our knowledge. Today, in a nutshell and in a new cycle, I would like to make a special request to you. If this cycle is a source of inspiration for you and you like what we are doing and the way we are doing it, that we are bringing those elements closer to you and we are going to deepen it during this show meeting. Please let us know in the comments under today's meeting because we will be preparing another one. We already have plans. Yes, with pleasure. Please give me time because I have to travel and then I have to find a time slot to come into the studio and record it. Up until the last year when I was coming back from some foreign conference. Now Rybnik is still in the first row. Of course, then the Budapest and then of course Portugal and other countries. There's our job in the studio. The script was always done on a Sunday for 2 weeks and every day 25 minutes. Some journalists did not work like me. Today, I decided to dedicate this time just to our film recording studio as well as podcast because the modern language says it's not a radio show, it's called a podcast. I laugh about it that I find myself below a certain caste. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is how this modern world sometimes changes terminology. My dear friends, I appreciate all the more, Doctor, the time you have found to meet us today. I hope that in your busy schedule, you too appreciate the opportunity to listen to today's meeting. Once again, I very much encourage you to simply keep up to date with these conferences, both the conferences that we organize in Poland and abroad, as well as those that are available at any time, the online conferences. Once again, thank you very much, Doctor, for meeting us today, and to all of you, thank you very much for being here in such large numbers, and I look forward to seeing you. See you there, and from heart to heart,